what they do in the world and how much they matter. So I'm going to share a little bit about Youth Poet Laureate first. It's a brand new program. It just started this year, so I'm the first inaugural Youth Poet Laureate, which is pretty cool. It is under the branch of Creative Youth of Arizona, which is actually ran and made by Arizona Youth. It is looking to go under ASU's writing program, which I think is really cool. Right now, there are applications being accepted for Youth Poet Laureate. So if you know any youth in the Phoenix area or really anywhere all over, they can apply. It's open till July 10th or June 10th. Sorry about that. But it's a really cool program. What we did is I came up with my goals and what I wanted to do. And for me, that was working with Indigenous youth as much as possible to show that writing is an outlet for different people. Because, sometimes we're taught that, sports is the way to go, which it is a good route to go. It is healthy for you. But another good way is writing. So that's what I was mainly focusing on. And, you just go to different events. You go read your poetry at different events. Like April had mentioned, I read at the Herd. I've read at an MMIW, like, beginning kickoff event. And if you get the chance, you're invited to different retreats. Like I was invited to one in Ohio, and the Desert Nights Rising Stars one for ASU, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's mainly what we did, and we just shared it as much as possible. We are supposed to write a chapbook also, but because of Corona, that's kind of iffy right now. We're still working on that, but I think it's a really cool way to, just get stuff done. So Lisa, by chance, did you get the PowerPoint? Yay. Sareya Taylor. My name is a little bit hard to pronounce. It's Sareya, not Sareya. Perfect. Okay, so this is when I went to JSA at Princeton University. Junior State of America it mainly involves politics. And I was really, really nervous because at that time the impact of my words still didn't really hit me. I was just going because I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool. I get to go across the country. Wow, I was so excited. And I got there and we had to write this paper because I was in international studies, and we had to write this paper. So I wrote mine about the loss of Indigenous languages and its effect on international relations. And I remember there were quite a lot of arguments with different boys in the class about the importance of Indigenous languages in general, like if they really were that important. And, I talked to so many different people. There were people from Saipan, there were people from small little towns, there were people from all over. There's so many different demographics that were shown there. But like usual, I was the only Native student there, which was really interesting to me. Like there are Pacific Islanders, which I thought was cool, so we could relate in some ways, but I was the only Native student. And, especially as Indigenous people, our words are really important in how we show ourselves, because for the most part, sometimes we are the only Native in the room, and how we hold ourselves is the impression that we're going to leave on people. They're going to remember that, and they're going to associate that with all other Natives. So it was really hard in a way, because I didn't know what to say and when I should say it, and if what I was saying was too much or not enough. So that's when I really started thinking about how do my words affect people. And thankfully, I'm pretty sure my words affected them positively. I've had multiple people from the JSA program reach out to me. Some of them are older than me, and they've asked me different things. Like recently, with everything happening with COVID, one of my friends from the program reached out, and he was like, "Hi, Sareya, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I remember you from JSA, and I remember you were talking about what it's like on different reservations, and I was wondering if there was a way I could donate funds, especially with COVID going on right now."
Nice.
And, I remember reading his message, and I was like, wow, I talked to this boy maybe once, I guess, and we didn't even have the same class. So the fact that he remembered something that I said to him about that was just mind-blowing to me. But yeah, you can go to the next slide now. This is when I won Youth Poet Laureate. That's my mom and my two brothers and my sister, and that is me. To apply, how I applied was I was really last minute as usual. I, during this time, I am and I still am a part of the Phoenix Indian Center, and I'm a part of their youth council program, and they have different sorry, they have different like mentors and people that we work with. And during this time, M. McDonough was one of the youth council advisors, and they are a poet from Denver, and they're really amazing. They're really, really, really good poet. But they were like, Sareya, you should apply. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. Because when I was younger, I was always writing, like it's something I did, but I never had any idea that it was poetry. I thought that I was just writing things down. I thought I was just writing what I thought about things. And when I could do something special with it, I was like, oh, this is just fancy writing, not poetry, it's just fancy writing. And so I submitted and I won. And I remember the night that I got my email notification that I made it as one of the final people. I was absolutely like, my mind was blown. I was like, you know what, this is good enough. I don't even need to win. I was absolutely mind blown because it was the first time I ever thought anything about poetry, and the fact that I had even gotten that far just blew my mind. I remember that night they called my name. They're like, Sareya Taylor. And I was sitting there and I was like, who won? Who's that? I was sitting there and the girl next to me was just looking at me. She's like, you won. And I was like, what? And she was like, you won. And I was like, oh, my name's Sareya. And I got up and I slowly walked up there and they were like, do you have anything to say? Please read a poem. And I just started crying. I just started bawling. I was not prepared. I was just so mind blown that I won. And yeah, that's how that night went. You can go to the next one. Oh yeah, okay. So another thing that I'm a part of is the Future Inspired Native American Leaders Youth Council program, which is through the Phoenix Indian Center. I'm the president this year. These are some of my youth council members. They're all really cool. I really like all of them. I just wanted to show them, that's all. So you can go to the next one. Oh, this is the first like official poet laureate thing that I did. This is the first MMIW kickoff event. It was at Indian Steel Park, and they asked me to read some poetry there. And I was like, okay, because I had a few MMIW poems, and I don't know. I wasn't very confident. I was very, very nervous. I thought everyone's going to be like, ugh, it's not any good. But thankfully, I got to talk to some of the people after I read, and they told me that their words made them think of the people that they had lost or people that they had loved, and it made them feel like they were there. Like, it made them feel like, yeah, they're gone, but everything's going to be okay. Like, it gave them that kind of reassurance that it's going to be okay. And yeah, that was like really amazing to me because I never really truly realized how much poetry can affect someone. Like when I was reading, I almost was crying because just like the feeling there was just so heavy and sad. And when I was reading, it felt like different, I guess. People were like, it like brought us all closer together in a way. If that makes any sense. But yeah, that was my first poetry event. You can go to the next one, please. Oh yes, I did a reading at the Phoenix Art Museum. I don't have any pictures of myself, of course, but that's Jake Skeets and that's Tate Walker. Jake Skeets is an amazing, amazing poet, just like Tate. Tate is one heck of a person. They are one of the best poets ever. I remember I really don't go to poetry events, especially during that time. I never went to any. And reading poetry wasn't really something that I did. So when I heard their poetry, my mind was absolutely blown. Because, I don't know, when I look at my poetry, I think of it as like elementary level. So when I heard Tate and Jake and the other Indigenous readers, they were like master's level. I was so mind blown. It was such an amazing event. Yeah, I really appreciated hearing the different indigenous poets. You can go to the next one. That's what's really cool is that oh yeah, that's a picture from that day. There's all my siblings. They're all very cute. They weren't very happy though. They were tired. You can go to the next one. This is when I went to the retreat in Ohio. It was called Wellspring. My phone didn't work there at all. I think that was part of their plan, is to make sure that there was no cell service. So of course I have my picture of my food, and those people were those lovely people were all the other poets. They were all youth. The oldest one there was, I think, 18, and he had like just turned 18. But it was really cool. They were from all over, mostly from Ohio, but they had reached out to different areas. It was really cool. You can go to the next one. One of the girls there, she technically still is the poet laureate of Ohio, I think it was. And now she's actually one of the finalists for the National Youth Poet Laureate, which is so cool. There, all of us were, we all sat in the living room, and it was really cold, so we all didn't really mind sitting so close together. There's a YouTube link out there somewhere of all of us reading our poetry, because they do like a really cool like poetry reading at the end. I totally forgot to put that in there, but it's really cool. I read one of my poems that I'm more known for, I guess, which I'm gonna read later. But
Yay.
Yeah, just hearing all their poetry is so amazing. You can go to the next one. This was the herd event. This was like my very first, like, I planned this pretty much myself. I was so proud of it. I had Tate, I had Jay Mercado, I had Dominique Days Hunter, and myself, and all my friends came, and like everyone poured into me, really, really just showed themselves, and they came for me, and it was just a really amazing event. I had done some stuff with the herd beforehand, like I did some workshops and stuff like that there, but this event was super special to me. I really loved it. I read a lot of my poetry there. At other places, I'll read like maybe 2 poems, but there I read a lot more of my poetry, and it was just really cool. You can go to the next one. Or wait, is that it? I don't know. Can you hit it again? There we go. Okay. This was the Arizona ASU. I was about to read it out loud. Arizona State University Desert Nights Rising Stars Conference. In that picture, where I'm going like this, that's Laura, that's Rosemary. Oh, that's I can't remember names. I'm so bad with names, but they're all different. Yeah, they're all different poet laureates. Like Laura, she's the poet laureate for the Navajo Nation. Rosemary's the adult poet laureate for Phoenix. The man in the blue shirt, he is the Southwest poet laureate. And I really should remember their names considering, but the man like kind of kneeling, he's the poet laureate for Tucson, which is really cool. I actually didn't know they had one, so I was very surprised. But it was such an amazing event. Laura got to share some more of her work, and it was just so good as usual. I really love that one. That's where I got to see so many more Indigenous poets like Sherwin Bitsui. Like, I always knew that there were Native poets, but it seems to me that when I go to these poetry events and stuff like that, there's even more representation than different things. Like in the writing community, I find that there's a lot more Indigenous representation than within others sometimes, which I find is really, really cool, because then, they're able to reach audiences that, I may not be able to reach, but we still get to talk about our experiences as Indigenous people, which is really cool. You can go to the next one. Oh, okay. So for a little bit there, I got to work with the Bernie Sanders campaign. I was a part of their Tribal Nations organization, which was really cool. I got to read at some of their, like, what do you call it, like housewarming parties for their different offices. I got to go to the rally, which was really cool, and I got to be really close. And if you don't know, I really love Bernie Sanders. I was extremely, extremely excited. I thought it was very awesome because we got to help find good Indigenous representation to go represent before he came on stage. So I thought that was really cool. I really appreciated working with that campaign. They were super, super nice and very, very open-minded, which I thought was amazing. They were really willing to listen and take in whatever you said as gold, which was really cool. You can go to the next one. Oh yeah, and that's pretty much the end. Um, I have now graduated from Perry High School. I am going to college this fall. I'm taking classes at Thana and San Carlos Apache College right now, which is really cool. And yeah, I'm just really excited. I've been going to like different small poetry workshops that are held like on Zoom like this, or just different things like that. So yeah, that was basically my PowerPoint. But now if it's okay with you, April, I can share a poem.
Please.
Okay. It's been edited a couple times, so. My go-to icebreaker answer. My name is Sareya, and I'm the one Native person you know, or the first you've been forced to listen to. I'm the one who makes everyone feel uncomfortable with the words I speak. My name is Sareya, but according to Disney, the media, and Party City, my name is Pocahontas. My name is Elizabeth Warren's cousin. My name is the sexy Indian wench. I'm the one who refers to themselves as a redskin and makes you think of your racist grandparents, or maybe your favorite football team. My name is Sareya, and when I speak my language, it makes you uncomfortable. But remember that my language is what saved your country of the free. My name is Sareya, and I make you uncomfortable in a world designed for your comfort. The way my voice quivers but raises when I talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women, or the fact that some mascots are just plain racist, it makes you feel something that you haven't felt before and you're terrified. Because you know there's something I know very well, but you just can't seem to understand it. I speak of white privilege, and you hear me talking about your dishwashers, urban outfitters, dream catchers, and sage, and your yearly family trips to Hawaii. But of course, that can't be you, right? You think that's just normal life. Because all you've done is benefit from the exclusion of Black and Brown people. My name is Sareya, but according to the Declaration of Independence, my name is the merciless Indian savage. The way I talk about America makes it sound like I hate it. Like when I tell you about how I'm asked if I'm legal or illegal, if I live in teepees or an actual house, but you just can't understand why. You can't help but feel sorry for me because you know that there's something I know that you don't know. And you want to know and understand why I am the way that I am. You want to help me and be my white savior. But when you see me look dead inside when we talk about Donald Trump's crap or the native stereotypes that control my life, you decide you don't want to know what I know. To ignore my truths, my dead cousin, raped ancestors, and friends, so when I speak, you speak over me, and when I am proud, you put me down because you're scared. She Sareya Taylor Jose, she Tudafle in Schleet Low Claw Position, Shitakla Shamat Loud Clay Indians Taylor Sands Jose, Shoya Sing Rita Clay Danny Taylor Senior Jose. White painted woman of Fort Apache in my ancestors' wildest dreams, and I am terrified, and my name is Sareya. But because I'm a redskin, I'm forced to be strong and loud and make you so uncomfortable when all I want in this great big colonized world is to be comfortable, just like you. Yeah, that's the poem that I pretty much always read everywhere.
Yeah, let's give it up for Sareya.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh. That's sorority clap too, Sigma, but I know another context. So thank you so much for sharing your a part of your journey and a part of you, because I believe when I first heard that, I was like, I felt like I knew something of you when you shared your poetry. So thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to open up. We're going to have discussions amongst us, and the first question I would like to throw out there is, what is your first memory of your words having power? Could you start off the discussion?
Yeah. So for me, I think the very first thing that comes to mind is, oh Lord. A part of the Phoenix Indian Center, we do these things. We do this event. It's called like Native Legislation Day. We go there, and we're given the time to talk to different representatives and stuff like that. And I remember the first time I went, I was absolutely terrified. I had no idea what I was talking about. I remember when we were sitting at the place that we eat breakfast at, usually sitting there, and that's when I was finally trying to read my stuff, because I just had like wrote it from memory, like, okay, yeah. But I was finally looking through it, and I was like, huh, this is not gonna work. So I remember putting in like different statistics in there, and what I had talked about was changing how history is taught within schools here in Phoenix, because a lot of it is whitewashed history, and a lot of it is race, I don't know how to say it, but it erases natives out of the question. Like a lot of times, a lot of my white people that I know, they're sometimes really surprised to find out that I'm native, because they thought that there's something of the past. So I remember having that conversation, and the people that we had met with, they were like, wow, I never thought about that before. That never crossed my mind. Like, they were so surprised about the statistics and all of that. They were just like, wow, thank you for bringing this to my attention. And I remember being like, wow, they actually listened to me. Like, that's pretty cool. And that's pretty much like the earliest memory, maybe besides the JSA thing. But yeah, what about you guys? What's something that comes up for you, April?
Uh, Actually, I shared that at the beginning, so I want to give
That
space for others to also share, your first memory about your words matter. Um, is anyone else comfortable putting it on chat? Lisa can read it, or if you're comfortable in sharing, definitely would like to create this conversation amongst us. Go ahead, Kina.
Yeah, so I've had several different situations where I got very uncomfortable to speak my voice on things, and even as far as getting fired for a job for speaking up. And it's kind of like that saying of, you know, you what would you do behind closed doors, like if nobody was watching? And so even if it's the right thing, and even if nobody believes you, the truth is always better than going along with lies. And that's always how I've lived my life. And there have been many times where it's been very uncomfortable, but I continue to do that, and I am going to continue to do it in a peaceful manner, but really being able to have my voice heard, but then also other people that I'm in contact with, making sure that if they ever have a challenge or an issue, that they know that they can come to me and that I'm a safe place for them to express their feelings. So that's what I have to say on that.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Kina.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to share your first memory or a memory of when you had that realization that your words carry energy?
I'll just share something real quick. This is Bobby.
Hi, Bobby.
Hi. I think for me, just like the immediate thing that kind of came to mind as far as just words and interaction with words, I guess, especially as a young person, is journaling. And I remember my mom gave me my first journal like around fourth grade-ish from the book fair, the school book fair. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I still have them too. And I remember, doing the whole Dear Diary, because that's how I see people write diary. Love Bobby, stuff like that. But it's something that I continued, throughout the years and even into college and into adulthood, not as frequently, but still trying to journal. And I think just having the power of telling your own story and, you know, being able to reflect and just kind of, I think that's the thing, is reflecting and kind of working through things and telling your story, I think. And my brother used to be like bugging me to read it, and I would be like, no. And he's like, who are you writing it for then, you know? But I think just being able to have that, and then later learning, you know, that there are people that publish journals, and that you don't know it at the time that you're doing it, but you also, you know, are recording history that's happening around you too. And just all of those things that kind of play into, and it's just really been a useful tool for me, like throughout my life.
I love that idea about journaling, Bobby. It reminds me when I was younger, I had a journal too, a diary, and that's when I would. What I realized is I really wasn't allowed to have a story or to have a voice when I was younger. You know, be seen but not heard, and everything came out in that diary. And you know, like the crushes, the anger, my hopes, and when I got to college, because I still you know, wrote in my diary, then that's when I started to think, like, when and if I ever had a daughter, you know, I wanted to be able to share those diaries with her, because I remember thinking that my mom doesn't understand who I am, and she's never been, you know, a teen before, she's never had a crush, or, you know, all these things. And I thought that might be something I could share with my daughter, is when she gets to those ages, to be like, believe it or not, I was, you know, 13 just like you at one point, and these were my thoughts, and maybe it would be a good discussion. So thank you for bringing that awesome memory back, Bobby, and about the historical context. I read that as well. Like, how many people of us are journaling during this time, because it is historical, and it's, for many of us, this may be. I don't think this will happen. Hopefully, it doesn't happen again in, you know, our lifetime, and it would be a good tool to look back on during this historical time, because, like Sareya was saying, is a lot of times we only hear one perspective of history, and it would be cool to have you know, that you're documenting yours to share. So I'd like to open it back. Thank you, Bobby, and thank you, Kina, for sharing. And how about anyone else want to share?
April?
Yes, Marty.
Since you mentioned history, I have a little bit more history than the rest of you on the call, maybe, because I'm old.
Age is just a state of mind.
Exactly. Seriously, you know, I did grow up in a time when my youth was in the 60s, and I grew up in Oklahoma City, South Oklahoma City, and I did not go to school with African Americans. It was segregated then. Now, our community was predominantly Native American, Hispanic, and some low-income white, but it wasn't until I went to college that I ever really spoke and was around American. But prior to that, going to college, I didn't participate in it, but I heard racial slurs, and it didn't impact me at that point. But once I became more connected and became had, you know, relationship in college with some African American friends, well, then I saw firsthand how harmful words can be, and how hurtful that they can be. But I also think that there's such power for good in those words too. And so, as an older guy, it just does my heart so good to hear this today, and Sareya's poem and her spirit, and it's just so encouraging to me. So I consider it a real privilege to hear today's session.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. I really appreciate that.
You bet.
Does anyone, I wanted to also open it up based on what our Poet Laureate shared with us today. Do you have any questions for her? Yes, Miss Joanne.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you again. I just wanted to share, like with my experience, I grew up on the Navajo Nation, and when I was about 6, 7 years old, my mom used to work at my uncle's trading post in Wood Spring, Arizona. And so I was out there washing the windshields and putting in gas for the tourists that stopped by, and like for the elderly people. And I used to do, the tourists used to say, oh, can we get your picture? You know, it's like, you know, the token Indian child, you know, so I get my picture taken, I charge them $1 for the picture. And so
Hey.
my mom's like, why are you charging money to take your picture? I'm like, well, hey, I got to make money somehow. But my uncle used to laugh about that. He said, but it was like their first encounter with the people, and I would direct them to where the tourist sites were in our community. They'd be on their way to like Canyon de Chelly and Monument Valley and those areas. So it was just a stopping point along the way. But it seemed like they were really interested in knowing the locals' perspective on where they were going, you know, and their tourist sites and stuff. And I went to school on the Navajo Nation and grew up with a classroom that's like 95% Navajo, a few of the other tribes, but pretty predominantly Native American. So I wasn't really exposed to the outside world until I came to Arizona State to go to college. And it went from having a full classroom of natives to being practically the only native in a class of 300, you know. And so different topics, when it applied to Native Americans, they would all look at you like you're the only native in the room, so that they'd be wanting to ask your perspective. And I always, you know, just would share from my own experience and not try to do like a blanket statement for natives or something like that. That's what they were expecting. And it's like, you can't speak for other tribes. You can only speak for yourself, your family, and your community. And I said that this experience doesn't apply to everybody else, you know. And so that's where I got my first experience in people wanting to learn about us and our culture, and really get to understand what we're all about, because they, you know, the headlines at the times were something that they would see, like even today, you know, like years ago we had the Standing Rock protests, and now today we have this Black Lives Matter protest going on. So they're like, you know, why are natives involved with that? How does it affect them? You know, but it's better to explain to them that it matters for all people of color because it impacts us all. And so that was something that I used to work for a local corporation here in Chandler, and there were no, you know, hardly any natives employed there within our group, the department that I was in. I was pretty much the only native there too. And they would just do like, just make comments like, we need to have a powwow where, you know, we have Indian givers, you know, and those kind of statements. And I told my manager about that, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable with people talking that way. And she's like, oh, they're just kidding. And I said, no, I said, it really is more than that. And I said, they need to understand that, you know, the words that they're saying is, you know, impacting somebody within their team. Is what we're always been referred to as teams, you know, we're a part of the team, you know, there's no I in team, you know. But I said that if the team well-being is what we're trying to achieve and be productive, I said, you know, you can't just discount the insults, verbal insults to one team member. And I said, you know, if there was an African American, or, you know, we had a lot of Asian Americans that work there. I said, you know, if anybody said anything about them, then, you know, those managers would be in an uproar over what's being said. But me, I'm the only person here, and I'd like to escalate this. So I went above my manager and went to the director, and it went all the way to corporate. And then from there, they started saying that, oh, we need to have cultural diversity training. And so it really brought us to the table to bring different groups together to develop a training component for the whole corporation. So I was in the new employee training area. So there was a new training course that was required, the cultural sensitivity and diversity training. So it really made an impact. So I was happy to have found my voice to be able to do that. And hopefully today they're still doing that training, and but it's just one person speaking up that makes a difference.
Thank you for sharing that story. I think it's a great example, Joanne, of how our words do have power, and they can have many different consequences, positive, negative, and everything in between. And also, when we were having a pre-chat, Sareya was talking about even when we don't speak, that our absence of word also carries power and also carries energy. And I think that's a great point. So in this group, would anyone else like to share how they've used the power of words and focusing, highlighting on activities that matter to you? You know, Joanne talked about Black Lives Matter, and also about about like Black Lives Matter and other issues. I think Sareya, you talked about MMIW. Who else would like to share how they've used their words in power and advocating for other issues? Do you mind, Tate? Just because I know I know you, you and Mimi. Hey, Mimi, would you all mind sharing with the
No,
group?
not at all. We had our hand raised for a while, but I wasn't sure the process that you used. So,
oh yeah, you can always. Oh, and just so you know, you can always just unmute yourself. So
good. Okay, so first of all, Sareya, always fire. Love listening to you anytime. Your words do have power, especially when you talk about the younger generations listening to you. Have the example right here. She's so inspired by your words, and I so appreciate that you are constantly speaking them. So thank you. I guess the best thing I have is it goes to like why Indigenous words are so vital for our community, and that representation is so important. When we're not using our voices, it's so much easier for folks to ignore us. And voice can be anything from literal voice to words to actions. Can even be where we put our money, right? So just encourage folks to use it however they can, and the different ways that takes shape, they're all correct and they're all powerful. So do what you can with what you have. But I was a journalist, still do journalism, so 20 plus years now. And I got into it in high school, and as was politicized with Native mascots in North Dakota, where I graduated from. We had the Fighting Sioux, which was University of North Dakota's mascot, and I really didn't care at all about it, first of all, until someone made me care, right? Mm-hmm. Which was violence against Native folks. So there were pockets of Native students who were already aware that this issue was important and worth fighting against. And I was lumped into that being a Native student in my high school, and had my car and locker vandalized as part of white people proving that they weren't, this is honoring us somehow. Right, always so ironic that that's how they honor us. But anyway, and I was like, what the heck was this about? And I learned more about it, right? So I didn't care enough at the time to learn. And when I did, it was immediately clear that, first of all, it wasn't honoring. And second of all, it was extremely racist and not even worth, the debate, right? Everyone's like, it's a debate. You're on one side or the other. Well, you're on the side of me being a human, or you're on the side of me being a mascot. So that's kind of where that came in. And I wrote about it, and that was the first time actually that I even got into just writing for a public lens, and had a lot of great support come out of that, especially from my Native friends, my Native classmates, and even like their parents were like, thank you for writing that. And I never really felt being white passing, that I kind of connected with my Native peers fully until that time. And so that was a really important piece to like my identity. But and it also brought a lot of backlash too, but backlash that I was sort of proud to take on, kind of. And so then when I got to college, I, of course, immediately went into the big three, majors: doctor, lawyer, and engineer, which neither of those worked out for me. Yeah. So, those were always like the pathways Natives were supposed to take, right? Like those were the three big scholarships. So I was trying to make it where I could. But I actually got into the newspaper there too. And through that was actually provided with scholarships I had no idea about. And it was there that someone was like, we don't have, it was like less than 1%, and it still kind of is, Native representation in journalism. And you, Tate, have a voice, and you could make a change. Think of all the ways that newspapers, and this was back in 2000, right? So think of all the ways that newspapers like pave and provide pathways to how people think about current events, and even just communities in general. And think about the ways you even think about Native people, the stereotypes that we have of drunks and prisoners and non-educated folks, or whatever it was that was pervasive a stereotype, is purported by newspapers and news media in general. And me, Tate, I was told, could have a change with that. You could write stories about Native people that were truth-telling. And so I really was inspired by that, and also realized I didn't have to do as much schooling as those other three. I could get paid now to write, versus being more and more in debt. So that was a big couple motivations there. But I loved it. And my first internship was in Rapid City, South Dakota, and where a lot of my family lives still. And one of the first pieces where I felt really powerful wasn't even a journalism piece. It was fighting for my name, where my editor said, well, we can't get an accent on your name, Tate, for the byline, because the AP service, which is a wire service, doesn't recognize accents. And I was like, cool, except I know our paper can do accents. We've done it for Renee's all over the place, right?
Yes.
Writers was a Renee, and she had an accent. And so they were like, nah, well, that's because she's an editor. I was like, cool, except I'm one of your writers, and I represent a lot of people who use those diacritical marks. And I think we should really make a change. You could do this. It's easy. It won't cost you a penny, right, to recognize my name. And I fought for it. And I was like, well, fine, then I don't want you to use my name at all. Just call me intern. I was really passionate about it. And they were like, whatever. But you know what? It was like the next day, the editor was like, hey, you're right. There's no reason we can't use an accent in your name. And it was so easy. The original editor just fought me on it. Look, Tate, this is how it works. And white guy, of course. And then it was somebody higher up, a little bit more powerful, who heard about it, a woman. And she gave me that chance. And you know what? Nobody died. Absolutely nobody died. I was like, think about it. So I just standing up for my name, right? And which really flows back into what the video was saying, right? My name this is who I am. And if we don't even have that, what did I have? So that sort of started it out. And then later on, it would be as an actual professional reporter, I had a story. A Native business in Sioux Falls had just opened up. Really cool spot. They did a couple different things for the community, not just Natives, of course, but it was owned by a Native, and that was itself news. And so I wrote it and put it to my editor, and he was like, this would be a great front page story, but you just did that story about the Native pipeline protest, whatever it was back then. It was 2006. And so we got to give this some time to breathe, because we don't want to overwhelm our readers with Native stuff. And it was like, WTF, all these white stories then are totally flooding our paper. What is this? And it was such a another eye-opening event that I was like, man. And at the time I was like, I've been doing this for 5 years. So I was really haughty, I still have to fight for this, little baby protester me. But it was another like eye-opening moment for the editor to be like, well, I guess you're right, ha, and it was just it just took somebody pointing it out. But that was, again, institutional racism, right? It was like, oh, we did the one Native story this week, let's give it a couple of weeks and then we can do another one. And that was somehow flooding, the news media with Native stories. So words definitely have impact, whether positive or negative. I would love for today it's like what Sareya is doing with the younger generation, that I would say that that's where I focus a lot of my words, especially with raising a kid here.
Yes.
And I would love for Camila to maybe share a little bit about how she changes folks with words, even in her own classroom. It's something I think kids inherently know when right is right and wrong is wrong, right? We tend to get like, that's too political. Oh, like, okay, well, our lives are political, so whatever. But she made some changes with words in her classroom. And I think if she told it would be a lot more powerful there. So if you have time, I'd love for her to share that story.
We'd love to hear.
There's this boy in my classroom, and he said the word savage a lot, and I kept getting really annoyed. I told him to stop. He wouldn't stop, and it took me going to my amazing teacher and talking to her about it for a little bit for me to have a discussion with him. And the night before, I had actually spent a lot of time researching it, I guess. And next day I was ready. I had a paper and I read it.
She wrote a whole essay about the data behind and the history behind the use of the word savage. Yeah.
But yeah, that's and
what happened as a result of you confronting him?
He stopped saying it, and I never heard him say it again. And no one in my classroom ever said it again because most of my friends knew about it, and then Jose, his friends know about it. But yeah.
But your teacher did something for the classroom, though, right? Like made the word.
They couldn't say it anymore.
It became a word that was considered violent, and so much like cussing wasn't allowed in the classroom. The word savage was also added to the list of words that were violent in nature and were use a different word. It's pretty simple. So that was pretty cool. But she fought this kid for months, right? Like, I didn't even say fought. Like, she would come home and just be like, man, he did it again. And I think it started as one of those things where it was like a cool word, right? Like, oh, that's so savage. Oh, I love it. Like a trendy word, right? And but we know that the implications of that word, I think, again, Sareya mentioned it in her poem, Merciless Indian Savages, it's systemic and something we roll out every 4th of July, and is inherently violent toward Natives as a way to take our lands and lives. And here's this little kid in a elementary classroom using it, knowing it's harming a kid, a classmate, and he's refusing to let it go. And so, Camila took it to the mattresses and had her teacher essentially get it removed from the classroom use. So I think that's pretty awesome. But it did take some work, but it also took a little bit of courage and confrontation. And I think our kids are more than able. I think what was cool is that this kid Jose, he's an awesome kid, and he after I think learning that it wasn't all the different ways. I mean, Camila had like a list, right? Landra, she had receipts going back 400 years. And I think once that was in place and like really made clear to him, I think he did the right thing as well and stopped using it. So we got to give him credit as well. But education, right? Like our schools are like breeding grounds for some of this stuff. And I think we're seeing that in this moment too, where educators really have a big part to play in ensuring equity and accountability are taught, right? And so, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop my TED Talk here. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Yeah, thank you both for sharing your experience. As I think we might have a wrap up time for. Did anyone else have? You just need to share. Like you want to share something about words matter. Okay. Well, I definitely. I'm sorry, I just know you as Mimi, but Mimi, like what I wanted to ask you is, from that experience, what do you know now that you didn't know before after going through that experience?
I mean, I knew it before, but I have an amazing voice. Yay.
Yes, yes. Because you have such a jump. I'm 45 years old, and I barely, till recent years, learned that myself. And so hearing your story, I know that you and Sareya and my little Zobear, that we're, it's going to be different. You all are you're young warriors that are making it different already. And that just gives me so much inspiration and joy. But I also think that doesn't take the pressure off of me, even as old as I am. There's action on my part as well. And so I will thank everybody for joining us on Words Matter. And definitely want to say thank you, our Youth Poet Laureate. I just love saying that. I think that's cool. Thank you for sharing a part of you, a part of your journey, and I look forward to hearing more about what you do, and more importantly, the influence you have in our communities. And we all have influence. So with that, have a great weekend, and we will be back as a continuation. Now that we've talked about words that matter, next Friday we're going to have. We're going to be talking about, we're fleshing out the topic, but it's about voting, the action part. So with that, I hope to see you all next Friday, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Hanke.